The bathroom sink in Unit 3B had been dripping for 11 days. Jim knew this because he had written it down in the maintenance log the same afternoon Allie had left for her trip, and he hadn't fixed it until now because fixing it meant going into one of his buildings, and going inside meant working. Working was the only thing keeping him from falling apart since he left that apartment, drove to a motel, and stared at the ceiling for 6 hours without moving. He was lying on his back, half under the sink, holding a wrench in one hand and a flashlight between his teeth, when he heard a firm knock at the front door. 2 knocks, the kind that don't sound polite. He guessed it was the tenant. He called out while still holding the flashlight. 1 minute! He wasn't ready for the 2 men at the door. They wore regular clothes, but their way of standing told him right away who they were. One was tall and wore a gray blazer. The other was shorter and sharp-eyed, the kind who notices everything the moment he walks in. "Jim House?" the tall one asked. "That's me." "I'm Detective Marsh, Portland Police Department. This is Detective Fuentes. May we come in and talk?" Jim stepped aside and let them in. He put the wrench down on the kitchen counter. He didn't panic. Panic was for people who hadn't already felt empty and worn out in the past day. "What is this about?" he asked. Marsh looked at him with calm patience. The kind of look detectives use when they already know the answer, but want to see how you'll react. "Do you know a woman named Allie Grayson?" "She was my fiancée. Or I should say I ended it yesterday." He didn't say more. He sat on the arm of the couch and waited. Detective Fuentes spoke up in a flat, calm voice. "Mr. This morning, around 9 o'clock, Allie Grayson went into the Novastride medical boardroom at their main office downtown. She wasn't fully dressed. She had a gun with her. She shot and killed Franklin Gordon, a senior board member and the main shareholder. She also hurt Robert Gordon, the vice president of marketing, badly. Right now, he is having surgery at OHSU, and his chances of getting better are low." Jim sat quietly for a moment. He looked at the floor, then back up at Marsh. "She killed the old man," he said. "Yes, sir." "And Bobby is in the ICU." "Yes." Jim nodded slowly, as if accepting something hard to believe. "Okay. You need to hear something because I can already tell from the way you both are standing that you think I had a hand in this." Marsh didn't say anything. That was enough of an answer. Jim stood up. "Follow me." He went to a small desk in the corner of the room and opened his laptop. He found an email. "Yesterday afternoon, while I was still at my apartment, I got an email from a Novastride corporate account. It was sent by Robert Gordon. Inside was a link to a long video file, 7 hours long. The video showed what Bob Gordon and his grandfather did to Allie during a business trip. They forced her in bad ways. They gave her medicine without telling her clearly what it was. They recorded everything and then changed the video to make it look like she agreed to all of it. Then Bob sent this video to me to break off our engagement and to get back at me for something that happened between us in high school." Jim clicked on the email and turned the screen so they could see the message. "This is the email. This is the link." Fuentes leaned closer and looked at it. "We will need to watch the video." "I know. That's the problem," Jim said as he clicked on the link. The page showed a gray screen with just one line. "File not found. This content has been removed." Jim refreshed it, but it was the same. "It was here yesterday," Jim said. 7 hours of it. I watched enough to understand what happened to her. Then I shut it off, because I couldn't handle it anymore. I ended the engagement, left the apartment, and came here. I haven't touched the laptop since." Marsh's face changed from calm to something more serious. "And there's no copy? No download?" "No, I didn't download it. I didn't think about keeping evidence. I was thinking about what happened to her." He stopped and took a breath. "I wasn't in the right place to think about saving anything. No, there's no copy." Fuentes sat up straight. "Mr. House, let me explain how this looks from our side. Robert Gordon is badly hurt. The man in surgery is the direct boss of your ex-fiancée. His grandfather, who has passed away, was the one in charge of her career progress. You are a real estate developer with a lot of money, which would have been affected by marrying Ms. Grayson. Franklin Gordon had a large life insurance policy through his company's plan. We have checked, and Robert Gordon recently changed the person who would get money from a related policy. The legal issues get complicated quickly when you start looking at all these connections. Jim stared at him for a long time. You think I convinced her to do this for money? I'm just telling you how it looks, Mr. House. House. It looks like that because the only piece of evidence that explains what actually happened has been removed from the internet. And you're standing here talking to me instead of asking Nova Stride's IT department who deleted it and when. He spoke calmly. He wasn't going to get louder. Bob sent that file. It came from his Nova Stride work email. That means it went through their servers. That means their IT team had a record of it, or they had one until sometime between last night and this morning when they decided it shouldn't exist anymore. Marsh and Fuentes looked at each other. You need to get a court order for their servers, Jim said. Today, not tomorrow, because every hour you spend talking to me is time their lawyers are cleaning up anything that links that email to what Bob and his grandfather did to Allie. They have a big legal budget and a team ready for problems. I promise you, by the time you get permission from the court, there will be nothing left. That's a serious claim, Marsh said. It's a serious situation, Jim answered. A woman had a mental breakdown and walked into a board meeting with a weapon. Things have been bad for weeks. I'm telling you, she was tricked and forced by the two men she acted against, and the only proof of that is being deleted right now while we stand here. Fuentes took out a notebook. You mentioned a past problem between you and Robert Gordon. Can you tell us more about that? Jim almost smiled. Almost. We went to high school together. He was with my girlfriend when I was 17. I hit him. He didn't fight back. That's all there was between me and Bob until Allie said she worked under him at Nova Stride last year. And you didn't tell the company? No one in HR? Anyone who could have helped? I told Allie again and again that I was worried. But she said she could take care of it. She said he had changed. She said there were rules to follow. Jim put his hands flat on the desk. She was wrong. I was right. And now I'm sitting here being told that the only proof of what happened to her has been destroyed, and your team is looking at me instead of the company that hid this. So, Detective, I have one clear question. How did you find out Allie shot those men? Who was the first to call the police? Marsh said. Nova Stride Security. Exactly. Not the police. Not someone in charge. Nova Stride Security called it in. That means they controlled the first story. They decided what information got to you first, how it was told, and what the officers were told before they even went into that building. He paused for a moment. So you're working with their version of the story. And in their story, I'm the easy one to blame, because I have a reason to do it, and I don't have a lot of money or lawyers backing me up. Neither detective said a word. Their silence said more than any talk could. I will help with whatever you need, Jim said. I'll give you email details, times, anything from this laptop. I want the truth found, more than anything. But when you go back to your office, think hard about who gains from how this story is told now, and who loses. Because I am not part of a hidden plan. I am a man who got a video sent to his email yesterday meant to embarrass him and ruin his engagement. But instead of keeping it as proof, I made the very human mistake of turning it off and walking away. He picked up the wrench from the counter and put it back in his toolbox. I had nothing to do with what Allie did this morning. I didn't know it was coming. And if anyone tries to blame me for it, I will work to show the truth about Nova Stride, their board, and every judge in this county in open court. I promise you that. Marsh closed his notepad. Don't leave the city, Mr. House. I have 11 properties to take care of. I'm not going anywhere. They left. Jim stood by the window and watched their car leave the parking lot. Then he sat back down on the couch arm and buried his face in his hands. Not crying. Not yet. Maybe not at all. He sat quietly for a long time. Then he picked up his phone and called his lawyer. His lawyer's name was Doug Farrell. Doug had worked in property and civil law in Portland for 22 years. Jim had relied on him for every property deal since buying his second duplex. Doug was not a criminal lawyer. He made that clear when Jim called after the detectives left Unit 3B that night. Doug gave Jim the number of a defense lawyer named Carol Vittner. He told Jim to call her first thing in the morning. Then he said something that stayed with Jim through the long, sleepless night. "Jim, listen carefully. No matter what you think this is now, by morning, it will be something else. These people have resources you don't even know about. Don't say a word to anyone, not the police, not a reporter, not a neighbor, until you've talked to Carol." Jim called Carol at 7 in the morning. She told him to stay calm and avoid social media. Then he turned on the news. Nothing. Not a single word. No headlines, no breaking news alerts on any local channel. A top member of the biggest healthcare group in the Northwest had been killed in his own meeting room. But the city of Portland seemed like it didn't even know. Jim sat quietly for a long time. Then, he called a man named Terry Walsh. Terry was 61 years old and had worked in commercial real estate for 30 years. He knew almost everyone at City Hall, like inspectors, clerks, and court workers by their first names. Jim had met him 4 years before at a property auction. Since then, they had kept a good connection, the kind of friendship where both people understand how useful it is to know the right people. Terry was the one Jim called when he needed to find out which building permits were stuck at City Hall and why. Now, that was exactly who he wanted to talk to. "Terry, I need a favor, and please don't ask me why yet. I need you to have someone check the criminal court files from the past day. I'm looking for anything about a defendant named Allie Grayson, female, mid-20s. Terry didn't ask any questions. That was typical of him. 40 minutes later, he called back. "Jim, there's nothing on the criminal court files. No charges, no filings, nothing. But I did find something in the civil and other records. There's an order for a mental health commitment signed yesterday afternoon by Judge Patricia Hollis from Multnomah County Circuit Court. It says, emergency involuntary commitment. The order sends your woman to a place called the Willowbrook Institute. It's a private psychiatric care facility in the West Hills." I've never heard of it. Neither had I, so I had my guy look into it a bit more. The operating license for Willowbrook is held by a company called Cascade Mental Health Partners, LLC. This company is a part of another company named Pacific Horizon Holdings, and Pacific Horizon Holdings is owned completely by Nova Stride Medical Network. Jim said nothing. "Jim," the other person said, "they sent her to their own place. They own the building where she is being kept. And Judge Hollis? She was chosen for the circuit court 8 years ago. Before that, she worked for 12 years as outside lawyer for, guess who? Nova Stride. That's right." Jim stood and walked to the window. "So there's no trial, no public record, no news story, just a woman locked away in a place they own, with a judge they control signing the papers." "That's what the papers say, yes." "Terry, what does a commitment order like this mean? How long can they keep her?" "Indefinitely," Terry said. "It's an emergency hold while they do a psychiatric review. In theory, if the review clears her, she leaves. But in reality, if the doctors who do the review work for Willowbrook, which they do, then the report says what those paying them want it to say. There's no legal way to get a second opinion unless a family member or legal guardian asks the court. Does she have family? I don't know. I don't think so. Her parents died when she was in college. I'm not sure if she has any other family." Then, unless someone speaks for her in court, she stays there as long as they want. "Thank you, Terry." Jim hung up. He stayed by the window for a while. He wasn't thinking. He was just letting the cold truth settle inside him, like cold water spreading through a room when a window breaks in winter. They hadn't sent her to prison because a trial would mean being in court. And in court, people would have to tell the story of what had happened to her. That story would become public. They could lose the trial, but they thought they could handle a psychiatric commitment instead. His phone buzzed. It was Carol Vittner. "Jim, we have a problem. It just arrived at my office by courier. Bob Gordon's legal team, a big group of 40 lawyers from Seattle who have worked with Nova Stride for 9 years, has filed a civil lawsuit against you this morning. They say you caused Allie Grayson to act against her will by using her feelings for you. They claim you wanted to stop Franklin Gordon from having any power over her career and to get money from his estate through the Allo Care contract." Jim's voice was very soft. "That's crazy." It is crazy, but it's also very well planned. You need to listen carefully. They didn't file this because they think they will win. They filed it to use it as a tool. I spoke to Doug Farrell 20 minutes ago. He told me you have business accounts connected to your property trust. Jim, you must go to your bank today. Right now. He was already grabbing his keys. How long do I have? Based on the time of the filing, they have already asked a judge to freeze your assets before the case even starts. If the judge agrees, and considering what Doug said about Novastride's legal money, I think they picked a judge who will agree. Your accounts will be frozen by the end of today. He was in his truck, phone at his ear. Carol, I have 8 employees. I have to pay my employees in 4 days. I know. I have a building project going on. The workers haven't been paid for 2 weeks already? I know. This could take away everything I've worked for in the last 10 years. Carol paused before she spoke again. Her voice lost its usual calm tone. Jim, I've been a lawyer for 17 years. I've dealt with big companies before. But this case, the way it's set up, how fast it came, the strong legal points, it wasn't made just yesterday. They planned it weeks ago. The moment she went into that meeting, someone at Novastride called and said, "Start the backup plan. This is like a machine, Jim. It was already running before today." He stopped his car at the bank parking lot. The building looked normal through the window. What do you think I should do? I think you should go inside and try to take out as much money as you can before they freeze your accounts. But you need to know that you can't win this fight in court with the money and help you have now. This case is made to wear you down. Every dollar you spend to defend yourself is a dollar you lose. They will fight every decision, question every piece of proof, and delay everything until you run out of money. Then they will settle just to say they won. That's their plan. That's how this works. Jim stayed in the parking lot for a moment. He looked at the bank building again. Then he thought about the storage facility. With 200 units, 40% built, sitting empty on a piece of land he had worked hard for over 14 months. He thought about Marcus, who took care of the accounting, and Diane, who handled the tenants, and the 6 other people who came to work every day because Jim had given them something important to be part of. Carol, I understand everything you're saying, but I need one more thing. The Allocare contract, the one that started all of this. What do you know about how that deal is set up on Novastride's side? There was a short pause. I wasn't expecting that question. I've been watching Bob Gordon for a long time. Since high school. Really. And one thing I know about Bob, and his grandfather too, from what I understand, is that they always try to do too much. They never stop at just winning. Bob couldn't just beat me in high school. He had to make me feel worse. He couldn't just get a promotion. He wanted everything. Men like that make big moves and fast, but they don't always make sure the base beneath those moves is strong before they build on it. Carol was quiet for a moment. What do you mean? I mean this deal, the way it was made, with pressure, using a woman as a bargaining point, and a CEO who was forced to be part of it in a way that breaks federal law. That deal probably has weak points that no one has seen yet. And I think the Allocare heart health centers, which are a big part of that deal, are being used as security for something bigger than just a healthcare contract. I want to know what is tied to what. There was a longer pause. When Carol spoke again, her voice sounded different. I can look up the public documents on the Allocare deal. The filings with the SEC, property and loan registrations. It'll take a couple of days. Take 1 day. Jim said. I don't think I have 2. He got out of the truck and walked into the bank. He moved what he could, but not much. The freeze happened at 4:17 in the afternoon while he was on the phone with Marcus, trying to figure out how to cover payroll using the $50,000 in the floor safe at his office. He stood in his truck in the bank parking lot and listened as his phone told him that his main business account, the one used to pay salaries, handle insurance, and cover mortgages on 6 of his 11 properties, was locked down and couldn't be used without a court order. He put the phone on the seat beside him and looked at his hands. 10 years. Not one bad deal. Not one property that wasn't carefully checked, talked through, and handled the right way. 8 people had trusted him with their work and their futures. And now, because of a grudge held by a wealthy man since he was a teenager, everything was at risk of falling apart by the end of the week. He thought about what Carol had said. You cannot fight these kinds of people in court. He started the truck. Fine. He wasn't going to fight them in court. He had spent 10 years learning how buildings get built. He also knew better than most how they fall down. The certified letters came on a Thursday morning. Jim found them in the mailbox at his office, a small converted duplex he used as the base for his property management business. There were 3 envelopes. The return addresses were all slightly different, but from the same big law firm in Seattle with about 40 lawyers. He stood in the doorway and opened them one by one. The first was a notice of a lien filed against 4 of his duplexes. The second was a lien against the storage facility he owned. The third one, this took him a full minute to understand, was an eviction notice for one of his own properties. His name was on the eviction papers. The case said, Plaintiff, House Holdings LLC, Defendant, James D. House. The legal details were tricky. It was about mixing personal and business money in a way only a lawyer paid well could explain. He set the 3 papers down on his desk. Then he called Doug Farrell. Doug, tell me about these liens. Doug spoke carefully. Jim, you need to know what's really going on. This is no longer just a legal fight. It's a financial attack. They don't want to win in court. They want to make your life so hard and costly that you give up and accept whatever deal they offer. Or you break down trying to pay all the legal fees before a judge even sees the case. The liens are made to stop you from selling or refinancing your properties. The eviction case is meant to confuse who really owns what and to challenge the trust that owns the building. It's all about pressure, nothing else. Can they really kick me out of my own building? Not in the end, no. But they will make you spend months and a lot of money just to prove that. While you do that, your project stops. Your money is frozen, and you can't pay your workers. Jim, I've been in this business a long time. I've seen this before. This is a well-known trick. What can I do, Doug? Be honest. In a normal, legal way? Not much. Carol and I have talked about it. To fight the civil case strongly, you're looking at least $200,000 for legal fees. And that's if things go as planned, which they probably won't, because the other side's team will do everything to stop that. The liens can be fought one by one, but each one means a separate paper to file, a separate hearing, and a separate bill. Also, the accounts are frozen, Jim. Your working money is gone. I don't know how you will find the money to defend yourself in any way. Jim stayed quiet for a moment. Then he asked, What if I don't fight the case? Then you make a deal, Doug said. But that deal will take a big part of what you own before they drop the case. They will want properties, not cash, because properties are easier to prove, and money can vanish. They will likely ask for your land used for storage, and maybe 2 or 3 of the duplex homes too. They will leave you just enough to get by, so the deal looks fair to a judge, but they'll take the best things you built. That won't happen, Jim said firmly. Doug let out a slow breath. It was the breath of a man who had said these words to others before, knowing people often didn't listen and made costly mistakes. Jim, Doug, I'm not going to ignore what you're saying. I'm not going to hire an expensive lawyer and waste money on a fight I can't win. I understand everything, but I need you to do something for me. I want the full AlloCare contract. All public papers, SEC reports, property right registrations, and any offshore financial details about the Heart Health Center building project. I need to see exactly how that whole deal works. There was a long pause. Jim, why? Because I've been in real estate for 10 years. I know how buildings get money to be built. I understand what happens when the property backing a loan fails a city inspection. I know what it looks like when a loan on a big construction project needs more money because of risks. And I know what happens to a loan when the value of the property falls too low. I want to find out if the people who have just ruined my life built their new business on something that might break down. There was silence on the phone. Then she said, I'll find what I can from public sources. Give me until the end of the day. Carol called 2 hours later. Jim was at his office, drinking bad coffee, looking at the 3 official letters still on his desk. I want to be honest with you about something, Carol said. She didn't wait for him to answer. I've been working long enough to tell when a client might be thinking of doing something risky or wrong. I'm not asking what you plan to do. I just want you to know that as your lawyer, I can only give advice about legal matters. If you do anything outside of that, I can't help with it. Do you understand? "We do," he said. "Good. Here is what I can tell you legally. The AlloCare Heart Health Center construction project is Novastride's main way to grow in the next 5 years. It is the most important part of how much their company is worth. More importantly, and this is something you can find in their official company reports, if you know how to look. The entire project is used as a guarantee for loans connected to offshore credit agreements. The lenders are a group of private investment funds based in the Cayman Islands. The loan contracts have usual rules about loan to value, which means the amount loaned compared to the property's value. If the value of the buildings being built, the projects themselves, goes below a certain part of the loan amount, the lenders can ask for the whole loan to be paid back right away. Jim sat up a little straighter. What is the LTV limit? 70%? Here is the part I think you will find interesting. The value of the construction projects used to make the loan deals was based on how much work was expected to be done by certain dates. The lenders expected the heart health centers to be about 60% finished by the end of this quarter. If they don't reach that point, say, if big parts of the construction got delayed or if some work did not pass safety checks and had to be redone, the value goes down. If it falls far enough, the loan terms are broken. And if the loan terms are broken, then a loan deal for $430 million comes due right away. Novastride does not have that kind of money ready. They would need to sell a lot of their assets quickly to pay. Selling assets so quickly would cause their stock price to fall a lot. That would break other loan agreements they have, making things even worse. A pause. It would be a total financial disaster. Bob Gordon and Nelson would lose everything. The lawsuit against you would become meaningless, because there would be no company left to sue. Jim stayed quiet for a moment. He was thinking about something simple, almost like the difference between sugar and salt. "Carol," he said, "how many Heart Health Center building sites does Novastride have now in the Pacific Northwest?" According to their SEC report, 7. 3 projects are in the Portland area, 2 in Seattle, 1 in Tacoma, and 1 in Eugene. And how far along are they? The Portland ones are the furthest along. They are pouring concrete on 2 sites right now. The others are at earlier stages. "Thank you, Carol." He paused. "One more question. Just as an example, if a construction project does not pass a city structural inspection not because of cheating, but because the concrete doesn't meet the rules, what happens to the project's schedule?" Carol's voice was calm. "In that case, the project stops. The parts that failed must be taken down and done again. Depending on how big the problem is, the delay could be 6 to 9 months or more. Also, the cost of fixing it comes out of the project's budget, which lowers the value used as security. And who does the city inspections in Portland? The Bureau of Development Services. Their inspectors work on a rotation. The site contractor asks for an inspection and the job is given randomly to an inspector." There was a long pause. "Jim, I want to remind you again that I can only talk about things related to legal strategy." "I understand. Thank you, Carol." He ended the call. He looked at the 3 certified letters for a moment longer. Then he took out a notepad and began writing. It wasn't a full plan. More like a list of things he knew how to do. Things he had learned over 10 years of building, fixing, and caring for structures with his own hands. He understood concrete and how strong it should be. He knew how salty chemicals could hurt metal over time. He knew how some substances could damage machinery parts under pressure. He could read and understand a construction schedule. He knew how to get into a work site at 3 in the morning without being noticed. He had done this many times before when a tenant had a broken pipe or a heating problem in the middle of a cold night in January. He knew how to handle tough situations. Carol told him he couldn't win in court. She was right. But he was not thinking about going to court anymore. He thought about the small safe behind the filing cabinet in his office. It held $50,000 in cash. He had put it there 2 years ago when the bank was changing systems, just in case there were delays and he needed quick money. He never used it before, but now he was going to. He thought about a contractor named Ray Demko. Ray had done some unofficial work for him before, tearing down parts of buildings that didn't have the right permits yet. This kind of work was in a gray area, often done in real estate, and no one talked about it openly. Ray did not ask questions. Ray had helpers who also kept quiet. He also thought about Marcus in accounting, Diane in tenant relations, and the 6 other people who came to the office every morning. They all had mortgages and kids. They trusted Jim with their jobs and hopes for the future. If they didn't get paid soon, they would lose their work in 2 weeks. He thought about Allie, who was locked up in a building owned by the people holding her. She was given medicine to keep her calm and was watched by doctors who worked for those people. She had no family left to help her. He knew he wasn't doing this just for Allie. He wanted to be honest with himself about that. He was doing this because Bob Gordon had targeted him by hurting the person he cared about most. For years, Bob had set a trap to take away everything Jim had worked for and destroy it all over a long-held grudge from high school. The only way to escape the trap was to break the financial power behind it by shutting down the company that supported it. But Jim was also doing it for Allie. He wasn't going to lie about that. He opened his desk drawer and took out his phone. He called Ray Demko. "Ray, it's Jim House. I have some work, but it's outside normal hours. No permits, no papers. I need people who are comfortable working at night." Ray didn't ask any questions. That was why Jim picked him. "What's the job?" "Work at construction sites. 7 sites in the Pacific Northwest. We'll start with the 3 in Portland. I need it done step by step at night, and it must look like a simple contractor mistake, not sabotage. I need people who know concrete well." "That's specific," Ray said, "and not cheap." "I know, I'm paying cash. All up front." "How much? How much do you need to make 7 problems go away?" Ray was quiet for a moment. Jim could hear him thinking. 30,000, 10 now, 20 when the last site is done." "Done." Jim looked at the 3 letters on his desk. "Ray, these people want to take my buildings. All of them. I have to take something from them first before they finish." "I don't need the story, Jim." "I know, but I'm telling you anyway." He folded the eviction notice and placed it on top of the other letters. "Be at my office at 9 tonight." He hung up. Then he went to the filing cabinet. He moved it a little to the left and knelt beside the safe hidden in the floor. He turned the lock. 10 years of following the rules. 10 years of honest work and fair deals. Being a businessman who could sleep well because he never cheated. He picked up the money. This time things were about to change. Ray Demko arrived at 9:02 without knocking. He was 53 with a strong build from years of hard work. His beard was gray but neat, and his hands were marked from many years working with construction materials. He walked in, sat down across from Jim's desk without being asked, and looked at the cash. "How much is there?" he asked. 30,000, just like we said. 10 now. 20, when the last site is finished," Jim replied. Ray picked up the envelope, felt its weight, then put it down without counting. "Tell me about the job." "All of it." Jim leaned forward. 7 construction sites. Nova Stride Medical Network's Heart Health Center projects. 3 in Portland, 2 in Seattle, 1 in Tacoma, and 1 in Eugene. The Portland sites are the most advanced. 2 are pouring concrete now for the foundation and lower structures. The others are in earlier stages, mostly framing and groundwork. "What do you need done?" 2 things. First, the crane hydraulics at every active site. All 3 cranes in Portland and all the heavy machines at the other 4 sites. I need the hydraulic fluid damaged just a little. Sugar. Not a lot, just enough so it starts to change when the machines get hot and working hard. It won't happen right away. Slowly, over a week or 2, the machines will start to lose power and then stop working. By the time anyone realizes it's not just a machine problem, the cranes are already down for repairs and the project is 6 weeks behind schedule. Ray nodded. He had heard worse problems before. "And the second thing? The concrete pours. The one's already done, and any poured in the next week before the team notices the equipment issue. I need a strong salt mixture added to the concrete before it hardens. Not enough to change how it looks. The surface must seem fine to the site supervisor, but enough so that, when the salt reaches the metal inside, it slowly causes damage from the inside. City inspectors always check the metal after pouring. The readings will be wrong. Those parts will fail inspection. The damaged sections will need to be taken out and redone. This will delay the work by at least 6 to 9 months, and the extra cost will be big enough to catch the lender's attention right away." Ray was quiet for a moment. He rubbed his jaw. "The concrete problem is harder than the crane issue. You need someone who can get to the mix before it goes out. That means either going to the place where they prepare the mix or someone at the site who can add the mixture right at the mixing drum." "Which is easier?" "At the site. The mixing plant is more secure and has more people watching. But on a busy site, the mixer drum is left alone for about 30 seconds each time they pour if you know when to move. I have a guy who used to finish concrete. He knows the flow of work on such sites. He can walk in with the right clothes and nobody will question him. Can he handle all 3 Portland sites? One at a time. Yes. Not all at once. 1 site each night, starting with the one furthest along in pouring. Ray tapped his finger on the desk. Jim, I'm not asking what those people did to you. I can tell it was bad. But I need to know one thing. Is there a chance anyone could get hurt because of this? If the answer isn't a clear no, then I will leave right now. Jim looked him in the eye. The hydraulic problem happens slowly. No operator is going to be on the crane when it stops working. It will lose power little by little, get slower, and the operator will turn it off before anything serious happens. This kind of failure just makes people frustrated, not hurt. The real problem is the structure getting weaker over time. We're talking about rust on the metal inside the concrete, something inspectors will find months from now, before anyone ever moves in. No one gets hurt. The work sites get delayed. That's all I care about. Ray picked up a thick envelope and put it inside his jacket. Portland starts tomorrow night. Give me the addresses. Jim slid a paper across the desk. Ray looked at it, folded it, and put it in his pocket. One more thing, Jim said. You have to keep this quiet. The owners of these places have their own security teams. If anything points back to me before I'm ready, we both will have trouble that goes beyond the law. Are your people trustworthy? My team has been solid for 22 years. That's why you came to me and not someone else. Ray stood up. I'll check in when the first Portland site is done. It should take about 48 hours. He left. Jim stayed alone in the office, listening to the building settle. He thought about what Doug had said 2 days ago. This looks like something a machine has done before. Okay. Jim knew about machines. He understood what happened when the wrong part got into a system that needed exact chemicals. He knew how small problems could cause bigger failures. He understood how one broken part would put pressure on the next part and then the next until the whole system gave way. Bob Gordon had spent many years building his machine, carefully, patiently, waiting for the perfect time to bring Jim into the plan. Jim was going to add some trouble to the system. 43 hours later, Ray called. Portland 1 is done. Both sites, he said in a calm, professional voice. The hydraulics on the tower crane and 2 mobile cranes are not working right. The concrete on the south foundation pour, the one finished 2 days ago, has been checked. The chemical mix is enough. The chloride numbers will be higher when the inspectors test. Any issues? No. Security at the first location is 1 guard working 4 hours at a time. There's a 40-minute time when the north corner is completely unguarded. We took advantage of it. The second site was easier. No guard overnight, just cameras. Cameras only help if someone watches live, and no one did at 2 in the morning. Good. When can you start on Portland 2? Tonight, if you want. The third Portland site, I'd suggest waiting until the weekend. The next big pour is Saturday. I'd rather do it while the concrete is still fresh, not after. Do it in the order that works best. Just keep me informed. Jim paused. Ray, thank you. Don't thank me, Ray replied. Pay me the rest when it's done. He hung up. Jim spent the rest of the day doing work that looked like normal property management. He called 2 tenants for maintenance issues. He looked over the papers Doug sent about liens and signed forms to let Doug start the initial responses, just to buy time. He paid Marcus, Diane, and 6 others from the cash in the safe. The amounts were smaller, and Jim explained the money in the account was frozen for now, but he was working on fixing it. No one quit. That showed something about them. Jim also made a different kind of call. He called Pete Calhoun, who ran a private investigation business in Northwest Portland. Jim had used Pete twice before to check on tenants. Pete was careful, thorough, and his prices showed that. Pete, I have a digital forensics job, Jim said. Someone erased a file from a cloud server. I need to find out where the erase command came from. I have email headers from the account that had the file and the time when the link stopped working. Can you find the IP address of the deletion? Pete was quiet for a moment. It depends on the server. If it's a regular cloud service, maybe. If it's a company's own server, as it sounds like, I have to do it differently. What kind of file was it? A video file. It was on a system tied to a company email. The email belonged to a middle-level manager at a big medical firm. The file was wiped within 18 hours of being sent. Sounds like the company's IT department erased it using a special remote access. Those kinds of deletions leave traces if you know where to look. The command travels through network equipment, and those logs are not always fully cleared. Pete paused. This will cost you more than a usual background check. I understand. How much? $3,000 to start. More if the case gets deeper. Okay, I'll send you the email, headers today. Jim opened his laptop again. Pete, whatever you find, I need the physical location of where the command came from, not just the IP address. If there's an address tied to the server that erased the file, I need it. You think the file is still somewhere? I think company IT teams that do wrong things don't delete their own copies completely. They hide them somewhere. I need to know where. Pete said he would start right away. Jim sent him the headers. Then he leaned back in his chair, thinking about what he was building. The sabotage was part of a plan to put pressure, a financial move meant to trigger a loan condition and cause Novastride to fall from outside. But just that wouldn't save him. Even though Novastride had fallen apart, the civil case was still open. Without the original video proof, there was no clear story to explain why Allie had acted as she did. There was no real proof of what Bob and the old man had done to her, and nothing to clear Jim's name. Without that evidence, people still thought Jim was the man who had tricked a troubled woman into causing serious trouble for two company leaders to make money. He needed those files. He needed the original unedited videos. He was starting to think he knew where they might be. He also thought things could get a lot worse before they got better. On a Tuesday morning, 6 days after Jim sent the email headers, Pete Calhoun called. Jim was at his storage place, an unfinished, empty, and legally tied-up storage space, looking over blueprints. He was trying to find a way to start building again by using cash payments that wouldn't be traced back to his frozen bank accounts. So far, there was no way. He picked up the phone as soon as it rang. "Tell me," Jim said. "I've been working on this for 6 days," Pete said. "This is the hardest tracing work I've ever done, and I've been doing this for 14 years. The people who set up the deletion process knew exactly what they were doing. They used 4 different proxy servers before the deletion command even touched the file. 2 of those servers were overseas, one in Luxembourg and one in Singapore. Normally, a forensic trace can't go past the first proxy server, but they made one mistake." Jim sat on a cinder block. "What mistake?" "The last proxy server before the deletion command actually reached the file, it sent the final erase instruction. That last server left a timestamp in the routing log. They forgot to remove it. This timestamp matches with network records on your side. It's not enough proof to use in court by itself because it needs several guesses to connect everything correctly, but it is enough to show where the command came from." "Where?" "The last proxy IP leads to a private server farm that isn't connected to the internet. It's not a regular hosting service or cloud provider. It's a private, air-gapped network at a specific location in West Hills, Portland." Pete paused. "Jim, the address is 4417 Ridgecrest Drive. That is the Willowbrook Institute." Jim stayed silent for a long moment. He looked at the blueprint, but didn't really see it. Pete added, "They have a private server farm inside a psychiatric hospital. That's not necessarily strange. Lots of medical places have their own servers to protect patient information and follow the rules. But the way this server farm is set up is not like a normal medical record system. The network is cut off from the public internet on one side, but it has private VPN tunnels that connect it to Novastride's company network. The command to delete files came from a computer on that private network. According to the device details in the routing log, it came from a machine in the sub-basement of the building. The building's original plans are public records. The sub-basement is marked for server infrastructure and secure record storage." "Pete," Jim stood up. "Are you saying Novastride built a private server farm in the sub-basement of a psychiatric hospital they own through a hidden company?" "That's exactly what I'm saying. And here's the part you need to worry about most. From the network setup, I could partially trace from the logs, this isn't small. The number of servers in that sub-basement, judging by the power use shown in the building's utility records, matches a huge storage place. That's not just patient records. It's a large data archive. They're keeping more than just the videos. Almost certainly, a company that seems to work this way Carefully, with legal plans ready, with a judge they can influence, and their own private, psychiatric hospital standing by. Doesn't just keep one set of files. Jim, I think that sub-basement holds everything. Every video, every record of control, every piece of information they use to pressure others. You're not looking for one small item. You're looking at the whole collection, and I just told you where it is. Jim was quiet for a long time. Long enough that Pete said, "Are you still there?" "I'm here. I'm thinking." Jim looked around the empty hallways of his unfinished building. Bare concrete walls, steel rods sticking up from the unfinished floor. The place was silent and still because he couldn't afford to pay the workers to finish it. "Pete, send me everything. The routing details, the IP info, the utility records, the building permits, the device data, everything. Send it to a personal email, not my work one." "Already done. It went out 5 minutes ago, just before I called." Pete's voice changed slightly. "Jim, I've been a private investigator for a long time. I've done work for companies, cheating partners, insurance cases, all kinds of things. I want to tell you something, and I hope you take it as friendly advice, not as me judging you." "Go ahead," Jim said. "Whatever you plan to do with this information, and I can tell you're planning something. You need to understand that this place has private guards, a company computer system, and a strong connection to powerful people. These people have shown they will use everything they have to protect themselves. What I found for you are just clues. Clues lead you to the building. But getting inside is a whole different challenge, and people who go in without permission usually don't come back out." "Thanks for the warning, Pete," Jim said. "I mean it as more than just a warning. If you want to do this, you need a real plan. You can't just go in and take the drives. The drives won't help if you get caught in a private medical building and end up in serious trouble before that information is seen by anyone." "I know," Jim said. "That's why I need a way in that doesn't look like a way in." He thanked Pete and ended the call. Then he opened an email on his phone and looked at the documents Pete sent. The permits for the Willowbrook Institute were from 8 years ago, filed with the city office. The building's original plan included a normal underground basement for machines and computer servers. The permit showed a basement space of about 4,000 square feet and the details for the foundation. There was also something Jim hadn't expected but found very useful. The basement was 12 feet below ground, with its east wall running next to the city's storm drainage system that helped carry rainwater away from the hills nearby. The models showed that the wall was only about 31 inches away from the drainage pipe underground. Jim had spent 10 years working on buildings. He could picture what 31 inches of strong concrete looked like. He knew what it would take to get through it. But the bigger question was not how to break the wall. The bigger question was how to get close to the wall without being noticed for enough time to do it. And the answer was right beneath his feet, running through the city like a network of veins. The storm drain system. It collects water from the street-level drains and moves it underground all the time, no matter what happens above. Jim pulled up the city's public maps on his phone to study the layout. The storm drain tunnel in the West Hills was a main channel, part of the drainage system built in the 1970s and updated in the early 2000s. He could get into it through a maintenance entrance 3 blocks from Willowbrook. From that entrance, the tunnel went straight, running alongside Ridgecrest Drive before turning east, right under the Willowbrook building. He thought about that for a long time. Then he made 2 phone calls. The first call was to Ray Demko to check if the 4 remaining construction sites, Seattle, Tacoma, Eugene, were ready for the coming week. Ray said yes, they were on track. 3 of the 7 sites were already affected. 4 more to go. The second call was to a tool rental place in Beaverton. He asked if they had a Hilti DD 500CA diamond core drilling machine. The worker said they had one. Jim asked about its weight, how loud it was when in use, and the size of the holes it could make. The worker answered all his questions. Jim thanked him but did not book it yet. He wasn't ready, but he was close. He needed one more thing before moving ahead with Willowbrook. He needed someone on the inside, not to get the drives himself, but to set things up so he could get them. The only person who could do that was locked in a room on one of the top floors of the building he planned to break into. He hadn't spoken to Allie since the night he left. He hadn't seen her face or heard her voice, and he promised himself he never would again. Not because he was still angry. The anger had faded and changed into tired sadness. But because looking at her meant holding two hard truths at once, that he still loved her and always would, and that what she did made it impossible for them to be together. He couldn't handle both feelings, while also trying to survive a tough fight at work. But he was a practical man, and the answer was simple. He needed a distraction. She needed proof that could help her get free. Neither could get what they needed without the other. That was all that was left between them. He had to find a way to get a phone to a woman locked in a private ward. He had to do it without anyone knowing it was him, and he needed to give her enough time with the phone to understand the plan before it was taken away. He sat in the quiet hallways of his unfinished building and thought about how maintenance workers moved through the world, quietly, with purpose. Jim carried things that no one questioned because they looked necessary: a toolbox, a cart, and a pile of clean linens. He thought about laundry carts, the big kind with chest-high frames and canvas bags pushed down hospital hallways. These carts were almost like part of the building, so people hardly noticed them. If a phone was taped under the frame, no one would find it by chance or on camera. A cart headed to the secure ward would get there eventually, pushed by a worker who could be persuaded, for the right price, to give a new patient a few private minutes in the laundry sorting room. Jim stood up, walked to his truck, and drove home. He needed to create a fake identity. He knew how to use tools like a drill and wrench, but he needed to learn how to work a laundry delivery route, one step at a time. The name he picked was Daniel Marsh. It didn't mean anything special. It was just a name that sounded like someone who drove a van and didn't ask many questions. It was common enough so no one would look it up or remember it. Jim had used a prepaid debit card to buy a commercial printer, a kit for laminating, and materials to make a basic work ID. He had a business degree and had run his own company for 10 years, so he knew how much paperwork a small service business actually checked before giving someone a uniform and route list. The answer was, not much. The laundry company was called Pacific Linen Solutions. They worked with 14 medical places around Portland. Jim found their job posting on a general labor website. They always needed drivers and helpers because the work was hard, the pay was low, and the shifts started early. He applied as Daniel, with a made-up 2-year work history at a laundry place in Salem. He showed up for the interview in clean clothes, gave a firm handshake, and said he was ready to start right away. The hiring manager was a tired woman named Sandra who had done this job 11 years. She wasn't easily surprised. She asked Jim 3 simple questions that didn't need proof and gave him a route schedule before 20 minutes had passed. "You'll work with Luis the first week," she said. "After that, you run your own cart on the hospital route. You okay with early mornings?" 4 a.m. is fine, Jim said. "Good, because it's 4 a.m. She slid a uniform across the desk. "Don't be late." Jim worked alongside Luis for 3 days. Luis was 58 years old and spoke only when he had to, which worked well for Jim. 3 of their 14 contracts were with big institutions, including the Willowbrook Institute. The first time Jim drove the van to Willowbrook's loading dock, he stayed calm and paid close attention. The dock was on the north side of the building, about 200 feet from the main entrance, with a security camera above the big door. A dock worker, a heavyset man in his 30s named Gary, checked their delivery list and signed for the transfer of carts. Dirty linens went out and clean linens came in. The whole process took about 12 minutes. Jim noticed 3 things the first time he was there. First, Gary didn't really pay attention to them. He looked at the list, counted the carts, signed the paper, and went inside. He was just doing his job, not watching carefully. Second, the laundry for the high-security ward had red zip ties on the cart handles. Jim learned that this color coding was standard after he checked later at home. Those carts went to a special elevator at the back that needed a key card to use. But the laundry sorting room on the high-security floor, where they counted and sent out clean linens to patient rooms, was on a different hallway. Any staff with a normal badge could get in there. Third, one orderly who picked up the high-security ward carts was a young man, about 23, named Kevin. He spent most of his time at the dock looking at his phone and seemed bored with his job. Jim thought Kevin would try to avoid work whenever he could. Jim remembered these things. On his 5th day at Pacific Linen Solutions, he did his own route for the first time. He got to Willowbrook on time, said hello to Gary, and waited for Kevin to come get the high-security cart. When Kevin reached for the cart, Jim stepped closer and quietly said, "Hey, Kevin, $500 cash. I need a favor." Kevin looked at him carefully, wondering if Jim was offering or asking for drugs. Jim wasn't, but Kevin thought about it for a moment. "What kind of favor?" Kevin asked. "There's a patient on your floor," Jim said. "She came in about 3 weeks ago. A young woman, late 20s, dark hair." The new arrival. Jim spoke quietly, so Gary at the other station couldn't hear. "I need her to have 15 minutes alone in the sorting room. Just 15 minutes. There's something taped under the cart frame she needs to find. You don't need to know what it is. Just take her down to sort the linens instead of doing it yourself. Then take a long bathroom break." Kevin was silent for a moment. "How do I know you're not putting something dangerous on my floor?" "It's a phone. A burner phone. She needs to make just one call, then you can take it and throw it away for all I care. It's not drugs, not a weapon, just a phone." Jim looked at him calmly. $500, cash, before you take the cart." Kevin thought about it. He did the simple math, thinking about how much $500 was compared to his pay. It was easy to decide. "Who is she?" he asked. "She's someone who needs to make one call that the people in charge here don't want her to make. That's all you need to know." Jim reached into his uniform pocket and pulled out the money, folded once. "You're not doing anything wrong. Letting a patient sort linens is your job." Kevin took the money and put it in his pocket. He took the cart. Jim watched as the elevator doors closed. Then he went back to the van. The phone was already there, taped under the cart's steel frame with strong tape. It was stuck near the back wheel, hidden unless someone got down to look closely. The phone was a prepaid burner, activated 2 days ago, under a fake name at a store far away. There was only one number saved, Jim's own burner, bought the same day at another store. No names. No way to track it back to them. Jim had written a text saved as a draft. He hadn't sent it yet because it was addressed to no one. It would only go out when she had the phone. The message read, "It's Jim. Don't answer until you're completely alone. I know where the drives are. I need your help. If you want to get out, read this carefully." Jim sat in the van in the parking lot for 2 hours. He didn't leave. He just watched the building. He would not see her face. He would not walk inside those doors. He had made his choice, and he planned to keep it. Some choices, once you change them, cost more than you expect. He was sitting in the parking lot of the building where she was locked up. He was there because she was inside. And that was all it meant. No less, no more. His phone buzzed. He looked at the screen. Unknown number, prepaid, Portland area code. He picked up right away. There was silence for 3 full seconds. Then she spoke. "Don't say my name." Her voice was off. Not like a stranger's voice, but like something familiar that had been broken and put back together badly. It was lower than he remembered. Slower. It sounded tired, like she was saving her words carefully. "Okay," Jim said. "Are you alone?" "In a van in your parking lot." Another pause. Then quietly. "You're here." "I was here when I sent the phone. I stayed." "Why?" It was a simple question. No anger, no hope. Just plain fact. Like asking why someone took a certain road. "Because I needed to know it got to you," he said. "And once I knew it did, I couldn't leave." She didn't answer. He hadn't expected her to. "Read me the plan," she said. "The text message. Read it out loud so I understand." "You don't have the phone with you now." "They took it 20 minutes after I found it." Kevin panicked and told the nurse on duty there was a phone in the sorting room. "She took it," before I finished reading. "I got through part of the message." A pause. "I got through enough." Jim closed his eyes. Kevin. Of course Kevin panicked. Kevin was 23 and had been paid $500 by a stranger. 20 minutes of clear thinking was apparently all he could manage. "How are you calling me now?" Kevin also has a personal cell phone. I took it from his belt when he came to say the nurse was coming. He hasn't noticed yet because he's careless. Another pause. "I need to put it back before his shift ends in 40 minutes. Tell me the plan." "There are storage drives in the sub-basement of the building where you are. Master recordings." Everything Bob Gordon filmed, unedited. The command that erased the file I had came from a server in that sub-basement. I need to get into that server room and take the drives. If I can get them to the Department of Justice and the press, the case against me goes away, Bob faces real consequences, and the order keeping you locked up gets thrown out by a judge in about 2 days. How do you get into the sub-basement? Through the city's storm drain that runs along the east side of the building. I have a concrete drill. The wall between us is 31 inches thick. If I work from inside the drain, it will take me 4 hours to get through. She was quiet for a moment. That's why you need to create a distraction. The server room has a guard on site all the time. Corporate IT. One person, armed. If everyone's attention is on something happening upstairs, there's a chance. Maybe about 15 minutes when the hallway in the sub-basement is empty. That's all I need. What kind of distraction? He chose his words carefully. Something that sets off the fire alarms and calls the fire department. Something that pulls all the guards and staff upstairs and keeps them there for at least half an hour. Something you can start with things you already have. Allie stayed quiet for a long time. He waited. They give me 3 different medicines, she finally said. I've been hiding 2 of them under my tongue and spitting them out after the nurse checks on me. The withdrawal feels bad. But my mind is clearer than it has been since I arrived, even clearer than before all of this started. She stopped, then said, There are oxygen lines in the ward hallway, wall units every 12 feet. The connections use standard medical equipment. A small flame plus the oxygen would spread quickly and look real on anything within about 3 feet. Jim said nothing. I'm not asking if you agree, Allie said. I'm telling you what the distraction will be. Will you get hurt? Probably not. The ward has fire sprinklers in every ceiling panel. They go off within 30 seconds if a flame gets too big. I'll start the fire at the far end of the hall near the emergency stairs. And I'll stay at the near end. The sprinklers will stop the fire before it reaches me. The alarms will bring everyone running upstairs. She paused. It'll be okay. Allie, don't. Her voice did not change. It stayed calm and steady like it had since she told him not to say her name. Don't do that. We are not doing that. You called off the engagement, I ended up here, and now we have a deal to make. That's it. So let's make the deal and stop whatever you were about to do. He thought about it for a moment. She was right. He knew she was right. He just needed a moment to accept it. Okay, he said. When? Ray will finish the last 2 construction sites tomorrow. After that, Novastride's lenders will get notices that their inspections failed within 10 days. That's when their legal team will be most busy, trying to handle the problem with their loan rules. The noise upstairs at Willowbrook works in my favor if the company is also facing a money problem that uses up all their attention. So, in about 4 days, give or take. I can make it through 4 more days without it, Allie said. I've been through worse things recently. He said nothing. He didn't try to respond. How will I know when to leave? She asked. I'll send you a signal. 1 text to Kevin's phone. 2 words. Jim thought for a moment. The word now. Just that. Whenever you get it, you leave within 10 minutes. And what if Kevin's phone isn't with him that night? I'll find another way. I always have a plan B. He paused. Do you still have the message saved on the burner phone? No. They took the phone. The nurse probably gave it to some security person watching the ward. A short silence. They know someone sent it, but they don't know who. The only name Kevin knows is Daniel Marsh. That's not a real name. I know. Kevin doesn't. After a quiet moment, she added, You covered yourself well. I cover everything, Jim said. That's how I've stayed safe this long. There was another silence. This one felt different. Less like a plan and more like something struggling to take shape. Jim. Her voice was calm, steady, but there was a small change beneath it, like a floorboard shifting under a step. I know this isn't the right place for this. Maybe there isn't a right place. But I need to say something, and I need you to just listen, not answer. Can you do that? Yes. What I did was wrong. Not just because of what happened, but the choice itself. I made that choice for reasons that felt real and important, but they turned out to mean nothing. I told myself it was for our future, for safety, for what we were building. None of it was true. It was pride and foolishness. And I'm not going to pretend otherwise. You were right about everything you warned me about. You were right about Bob from the first night I told you he was my boss. I didn't listen. And this is what that cost us. I know that. I know what it cost you too. And I'm not asking for anything back. I know you're not here for me. You're here because getting those drives out of this building is the only way to save what you've built. I get that. It's enough. You don't owe me anything. I owe you everything. That's the truth of where we are. She stopped. Okay? That's the one thing. Jim stared out the car window at the building for a long time. He thought about the girl from high school who had told him a hard truth on a tough night in the gym during their last year. He thought about the woman he had grown close to at a bar after their graduation. He thought about the ring, the apartment, and the life they had slowly built together. He thought about everything he would never have again. I heard you, he said. Okay. There was a short pause. I need to put Kevin's phone back before he notices. 4 days. Watch for the signal. I'll be ready. Then he added, be careful in that drain. The West Hills storm system is tricky this time of year. I know. I read the specs. Of course you did. Her voice changed, just a little, like a faint memory. Then it was gone. Goodbye, Jim. Goodbye, Allie. The call ended. Jim placed the phone on the passenger seat. He looked at the building again, then started the van and drove away without a backward glance. Hearing her voice hadn't given him any hope. It did the opposite. It closed the last small part of him that had been holding on to a door that he knew was already shut. It closed quietly, without any ceremony. The girl from high school was gone. The person who had survived what happened in the hotel, the boardroom, and this building was someone else. Someone practical and changed, down to the basics. Someone he could deal with. He drove back to the motel where he had been staying for 3 weeks. He took out his blueprints. 4 days. For so long, he had been getting only a few hours of sleep each night. His body no longer asked for more. The blueprints were spread out on a folding table he had set up in his paused storage space. There were maps from the Portland Bureau of Development Services, architectural permits from Willowbrook, Pete Calhoun's routing notes, and an outline he had drawn himself in pencil. It showed the storm drain path from the maintenance access at Ridgecrest, 3 blocks north, all the way to the curved channel below the east side of the Willowbrook building. He had measured it 6 times, 41 feet straight, then a curve. The curve was the hard part. The channel got narrower at that bend. He had checked the internal diameter from the original plans, and it was just enough. Barely. 4 days. He kept thinking of that number like someone pressing a bruise to see if it still hurt. 4 days before the notices about the inspection problems started coming to Nova Stride's desks. 4 days before, their legal team had to split its focus between fighting him and handling a huge $430 million contract problem. 4 days before, the trouble upstairs became real enough to matter. He was checking the drill equipment plans on the blueprint, trying to figure out how much space he'd have to move the Hilti rig in the narrow space around the bend, when he heard the door open at the far end of the hall. At first, he didn't look up. He thought it was Marcus. Marcus had been coming to the building every few days to drop off paperwork that didn't need a working business account. This kind of task kept the company barely alive while the accounts were frozen. Marcus had a key and always knocked before entering. This time, it was not a knock. Jim looked up. 2 men were walking towards him down the unfinished hall. The building was just bare concrete and steel, with sounds echoing weirdly, sometimes disappearing, sometimes bouncing back loudly. Their steps were firm and clear. They were not here to discuss the lease. The first man looked about 40, broad in the shoulders, with a face that seemed used to hard times. The second was younger, thinner, holding something in his right hand. Jim saw it was a short metal pipe wrapped in tape. Jim stood up straight from the table. He put down his pencil. He moved the table between him and the men. "I'm Jim House," he said. The broad man said, "That depends who's asking." "It doesn't, actually." The man stopped about 15 feet away. The younger one kept moving slightly to the left, trying to get a better view of the table. "You've been busy. Construction sites in Portland, Seattle, Tacoma, Eugene, cranes breaking down, concrete not passing inspection, all in the last week and a half. That's a lot of trouble for one company." Jim looked at him. "I don't know what you mean." "No, you don't. And you won't know for the rest of your life. Though how long that is depends on what happens next." The broad man stepped closer. "Mr. Nelson sends his regards. He says the court case is taking too long, and he's losing patience." "Nelson." Jim said the name like tasting something bitter. "Nelson. The one who spent 2 nights taking advantage of a woman while making a business deal. That Nelson, huh? He worries about patience." "I wouldn't do that," the broad man said. "Do what?" "Give speeches. No one's recording this. No one will hear how good you think you are. There are 2 of us and only 1 of you, and the only other person who knows you are here. Is the woman locked up in a hospital 5 miles away." Jim looked at the thin man, who had stopped moving and was now about 8 feet to his left. He looked at the pipe in the man's hand. Then Jim looked back at the bigger man. "Let me tell you something about this place," Jim said, his voice calm. "I built it. With my own money, my own workers, my own plans. Every part of this building took me 11 months to finish. I know every inch. You came in here without asking. You think just knowing where I am is a big help. But it's not." The big man smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Are you done talking?" "Almost." Jim took 1 small step back toward the unfinished storage room behind him. "Nelson sent 2 men here. That tells me 1 man wasn't enough. That says something about what he thinks of me. I like that." The thin man moved first. That was his mistake. He was fast, but he moved straight ahead, and that meant Jim knew where he would be in 2 seconds. Jim grabbed the blueprint table and knocked it sideways into his path. Not to stop him, but to change the way the room was set up, to buy a little more time. Then Jim moved back into the storage room, where some air tools he had been using for his work were still there, connected to the portable tank he had brought 3 weeks earlier when the workers last came. The thin man came through the fallen table and followed Jim 2 steps into the storage room. Jim picked up the nail gun. He did not aim for the man's body. He aimed near his face and fired twice. The nails hit the concrete wall just a little away from the man's left ear, close enough that small pieces hit his cheek, and the loud noise was like a small explosion right next to him. The thin man screamed, rubbed his face, and fell hard. Not because the nails hit him, but because his body thought the next moment would be very bad and chose to stop reacting to avoid pain. The big man came in fast, and Jim learned quickly that he was the real danger, because he did not slow down for the nail gun. He came in low and grabbed Jim's jacket, pushing him back into a stack of cement blocks that had not been moved since the cold weather. Jim hit the blocks hard and felt 2 fall off the top of the pile. He heard them land. The bigger man grabbed him by the shirt and pulled him forward. Jim lifted his forearm just in time to block the first punch on his arm instead of his face. But the second punch hit him on the left side of his cheek, and everything went bright for a moment. Just about 3 seconds. He had maybe 3 seconds before the thinner man stopped yelling and remembered the metal pipe. Jim quickly grabbed a loose cinder block nearby, a heavy one, nearly 30 pounds, with both hands and swung it. But he didn't aim for the bigger man's head. He didn't want to hurt him badly. Instead, he swung it hard down onto the man's front knee. The sound it made was one Jim knew he wouldn't forget. The bigger man dropped down quickly, like a broken elevator cable. Both hands went to his knee, and he made a low, painful sound. The kind of sound a body makes when it can't handle pain at once. Jim stepped back, breathing hard. His left ear was ringing from the punch, and he could feel his cheek starting to swell. He looked at the thinner man, who was now on his hands and knees near the storage bay door, covering his eyes with his hands. Then Jim looked at the bigger man on the floor, holding his injured knee, which looked like it would need help to ever work right again. Jim put down the cinder block and picked up the nail gun again because he needed to hold something. "I need you to listen carefully," Jim said to the bigger man. His breathing was heavy, so he paused between his words. I want you to understand exactly what just happened here, because I have a message you need to take back. Can you hear me? The bigger man made a sound, but it wasn't a real word. I'll take that as a yes, Jim said. He squatted down to be at eye level with the man on the floor. His voice became low and serious. You go back to Nelson. Tell him Jim House isn't the kind of man who breaks under pressure. Tell him 2 guys with a pipe in a place he didn't know about didn't come close to stopping me. And you have to get this part exactly right. Every day, Nelson spends sending people like you to do things like this, instead of admitting what he did to that woman, is going to ruin him. No matter what happens to me, is a day wasted. The proof is there. I know where it is. And there's nothing he can do to change what's coming. Nothing. The only question is if he gets hit with serious charges before or after he loses everything. And I'm going to make sure it's both. The big man looked up at Jim with the face of someone used to making others afraid, but now surprised by something he didn't expect. Tell him, Jim said. Then he stood up. He walked to the door of the storage bay and stopped. This was the part he didn't want to admit while looking over the blueprints and thinking about 4 days. Like it was a sure thing, like time was something he could control. These 2 men had found him here. Not at his motel, not at one of his places, not at a restaurant or gas station. Here. At a building that wasn't in any of his business papers, not linked to his name in public records. The only way they could find him was if they followed him or had watched him closely for the past week. Either way showed that what Nelson had done was more than just a small job. It was a planned operation. And if they found him here, they had everything else. The laundry route, Pacific Linen Solutions, the van, the loading dock at Willowbrook. 4 days was no longer 4 days. That time was gone. The chance he thought he had was closed now, because as soon as these 2 men told Nelson, one of them was already moving toward the door. Nelson would know Jim House was connected to the Willowbrook plan, the computer room would be checked, and Allie would be moved somewhere no one could find her. Tonight. It had to be tonight. Jim left the storage bay and went back to the folding table. The blueprint was on the floor where he had dropped it. He picked it up and spread it out on the table again, smoothing the folds with his hands. The line he had drawn across the storm drain route was still there, the same as before. 41 feet and a curve. He looked at his hands. His left knuckle was bleeding from hitting the edge of a cinder block. He hadn't noticed before. He wiped it on his jeans. He picked up his phone and called Ray Demko. Ray, are your people finished with the last 2 sites? Eugene finishes tonight. Tacoma is already done. You'll have confirmation by morning. I don't have until morning. Something just changed. The timeline moved. A pause. How far? Tonight. Jim looked at the blueprint. All of it. Tonight. Do you need anything from me to speed up the last site? Eugene is already set. My man is there now. I can't pull him back, even if I wanted to, which I don't. Then let it run. Jim folded the blueprint into quarters. I just need to know the Portland sites are ready. Portland has been ready for 8 days, Ray said. The inspection requests are filed. The city workers will come next week. Nothing will change that. Good. Thank you, Ray. He hung up. He looked at the 2 men in his storage room. The bigger one was still lying on the floor. The thinner one was standing now, leaning against the door frame, still shaking his head as if trying to clear water from his ears. You both need to leave, Jim said. If you're not out of this building in 2 minutes, I'm calling the police to say 2 strangers broke in and caused trouble. One of you has a hurt knee that needs help soon. The other has a face that will tell what happened. Think about who this call will be harder for. They left. It took them a bit more than 2 minutes. Jim didn't call. He waited until the sound of their car leaving the lot faded away. Then he sat on the floor of the storage room, leaning back against a stack of blocks, his hands resting on his knees. His ear was still ringing. The left side of his face was starting to feel stiff near the cheekbone. That meant a bruise was forming and would look worse by morning. He felt a special kind of tired, the kind that comes after a rush of adrenaline wears off. Not sleepy, but empty. Like all his energy was gone except what was needed to keep going. He stayed still for a few minutes. Not long. Then he stood up. He took out the prepaid phone he'd bought after the call with Allie and opened Kevin's number, the one Allie had used to call him from inside Willowbrook. He typed one word, now. He watched it for a moment before sending. He remembered the timing. The fire alarm at Willowbrook went off within 30 seconds of a flame reaching the doorway. The alarms would pull the guards upstairs. The hallway and the sub-basement would be clear for about 15 minutes before a guard on the lower level had to leave or move. 15 minutes to get through the breach, cross the server room, take the drives, and go back out. He had not slept for 22 hours. His face was swollen, and his knuckle was bleeding. The Hilti drill was still at the tool rental in Beaverton. He needed to pick it up, get to the storm drain access point, and drill through 31 inches of tough concrete. All this had to be done before Allie's distraction started. He sent a message but quickly took it back after 12 seconds. He wasn't ready to send it yet. He had to be inside the drain, with the drill running and the hole almost done before sending it. Sending the message too soon would give Allie only 10 minutes to act, with no sure way to know if he would be ready in time. Timing was everything. He had about 4 to 5 hours to rent the drill, drive to West Hills, enter the storm drain, move 41 feet through the dark pipe, drill through the wall, and be ready. Jim picked up the blueprint and walked to his truck. He sat inside for 30 seconds with his eyes closed and hands on the wheel, doing what he always did when facing something hard, breaking it down to a simple task and moving forward. Bob Gordon had made a plan to stop him. Jim had spent 10 years learning how buildings fall down. Tonight, he would use every bit of that knowledge. He started the truck. The tool rental place in Beaverton, called Western Equipment Solutions, closed at 8 p.m. Jim got there at 7:43. He was still wearing the same clothes from when 2 of Nelson's men had come to his door. His knuckle still had dried blood, and his cheek had gone from swollen to bruised in the 40 minutes it took him to cross the city. The man behind the counter was maybe 25 years old. He had the calm, neutral way of someone who rented tools all day and didn't judge the people who came in. His name tag said Brett. Jim put down a fake ID under the name Daniel Marsh and asked about the Hilti DD 500CA drill. Brett checked the computer without looking at the ID. "Yes, we have one. Have you used this before?" Brett asked. "Many times," Jim said. "Good. It weighs 42 pounds with the frame and water tank. Some people think it's like a regular drill, but it's not. I know what it is. I'll need the frame, the water feed line, a 200mm core bit, and a spare bit in case the first one wears out." Brett looked up and noticed Jim's injured cheek, but said nothing. "How long do you need it?" 24 hours. Deposit is $250. The day rate is $95. You'll need to sign a damage waiver." "Fine." Jim put cash on the counter. "I'll also need a hand truck and 100 feet of half-inch water hose." Brett looked at the cash and nodded. "I can get that for you." Jim signed the waiver as Daniel Marsh, loaded the equipment into his truck bed, and was back on the road by 7:58. He stopped at a hardware store on Burnside and bought a waterproof bag, knee-high rubber waders, a headlamp that could be used underwater, heavy plastic sheeting, and 4 bottles of water. He also got a box of disposable gloves and heavy-duty trash bags. He placed everything inside his truck cab. Then he sat in the parking lot and called Carol Veitner. The phone rang 4 times before she answered. Her voice sounded different after work hours, less formal, more real. "Jim, it's 9 p.m., she said. "I know. I need you to do something for me at 7 a.m. tomorrow. Not a minute later." There was a pause. "What is it?" "I need you to file an emergency paper with the federal court. It's to make Novastride keep all their computer systems at the Willowbrook Institute safe. This is while we look into the problems we found with the commitment orders. I need this paper in the public record as soon as the clerk's office opens." A longer pause. "Jim, that paper will tell Novastride's lawyers that you want to investigate their servers directly. They will act right away to—" "I know. That's the point. I want their lawyers busy with a court paper at 7 a.m., not watching what their security people are doing at Willowbrook." He paused. "Can you file it?" There was silence on the other end. It was the silence of a lawyer thinking very carefully. When Carol spoke again, her voice was calm and professional. "I can file the paper to keep things safe. It's a normal legal action because of the evidence about the commitment order problems that Terry Walsh already found. Filing it is not wrong. Another pause. Is there anything else I should know before I file it? No, Jim said. Nothing else. Jim. Her voice was low now. Be careful. He ended the call and stayed in the parking lot a moment longer. He thought about the timing. If the paper was filed at 7 a.m., Nova Stride's lawyers would see it by 7:30. They would be on the phone with their crisis team by 7:45. The Willowbrook administrator would get a call by 8 at the latest. Their chance to act, from when they knew the servers were at risk to when they could do anything, would be about 2 hours, depending on how fast their team moved. He needed to be out of that basement with the data before 7 a.m. That gave him about 9 hours. Jim drove to West Hills. He parked 3 blocks away from the storm drain entrance on Ridgecrest. The rain had been falling since he crossed the Burnside Bridge. It wasn't the big storm Allie warned him about, but just a cold, steady November rain that made every surface shine like glass. The city felt closed in. He sat for a moment and looked out the windshield. He thought about what he was going to do, not the details, which he had already planned carefully, but the meaning of it all. A man climbing down into a dark sewer pipe with a heavy drill to make a hole in a wall no one was supposed to break through, to take information from people who had already sent 2 men to stop him tonight. 10 years ago, he was fixing toilets at a hotel and saving money to buy his first duplex. The line between that man and this one was straight and clear. He had always known there were people who would do things others wouldn't. And he knew those people only stopped when someone pushed back hard enough. He spent 10 years building something while staying on the right side of the line between a man with a clear mind and a man who must think carefully before answering some questions. He was below that line now. He had been since the night he called Ray Demko. He didn't want to think more about what that meant, because it didn't change what had to be done. He stepped out of the truck and put on his rain gear. He packed the gear into the waterproof bag and then put the bag on the hand truck. He took the blueprints out of his jacket, checked the access point one last time, and put them away. The storm drain entry was a normal city lid set in the curb, locked with a special bolt that needed a specific wrench. Jim had the wrench because 3 days before he had checked the city's maintenance papers to find the bolt type and bought the right tool. He opened the lid in 40 seconds. Below, there was about 8 inches of cold, fast-moving water. He could hear it. He lowered the bag first, then the hand truck with the rig, and finally himself, pulling the lid back into place behind him. The channel was about 5 feet wide, enough space to stand a little straight if he kept his shoulders down. His headlamp lit up the curved concrete ahead. Water was coming over his boots even with the waders on, and it was so cold he felt it deep inside. He began to move. He had measured the distance from the entry point to the Willowbrook Foundation 11 times on paper, 41 feet straight, a 15-degree curve, then 12 more feet to the exact spot he needed. In real life, in the dark, in cold moving water, and pushing 42 pounds of equipment on a hand truck not made for this kind of ground, it took 32 minutes to reach the spot. The hand truck kept getting caught on the ridges in the channel floor. The water rose at the curve, where the channel got narrower, up to his knees at one point. He could feel the cold testing his waders as it pushed in. He reached the right place at 11:17 p.m. He knew this because he counted his steps against the blueprints and noticed the wall changed here. It went from smooth city concrete to a rougher surface like the foundation they were looking for, matching the Willowbrook building plans. He touched the wall and felt the difference. The wall was 31 inches thick, with 3 layers, about 6 inches of city drainage concrete, a 3-inch air gap, then about 22 inches of the Willowbrook foundation wall. Behind that was the sub-basement and the server room. He set up the Hilti rig against the wall, placing the drill bit at the center, 4 feet above the channel floor. The water hose was connected to a bottle he brought. It wasn't perfect, but enough to keep the bit cool during drilling. He steadied the rig, checked the drill bit's position, and started the motor. The noise was loud. Inside the concrete pipe at midnight, it sounded harsh, like a big machine breaking down. He wasn't ready for how bad it would be. But he told himself no one above ground would hear it over the rain, and even if they did, city crews often worked odd hours on drains. There was no reason for anyone to think it wasn't normal maintenance. He held on to that thought for the first hour. The drill went through the city's wall in 58 minutes. When the bit broke through into the air gap, he stopped, changed the bit, moved the rig, and began drilling the Willowbrook foundation wall. This wall was tougher, the concrete was denser, and the reinforcing bars were closer together. He could feel the drill catching and releasing as it pushed through the metal. Twice he had to stop and cool the drill bit with water because the motor got too hot. The water in the channel had risen about 2 inches while he worked. He was no longer kneeling. Now he was standing in the cold water, which reached his hips. His lower body felt numb, but he stopped paying attention to that because it did not help. He talked to himself, but not all the time, only in short bursts when the work became too repetitive and his mind started to wander to things he did not want to think about. He spoke about the storage area. He talked about the concrete work that needed to be done before winter made the ground hard. He spoke about Marcus, who stayed even when he did not need to, and Diane, who stayed for the same reason. He talked about what the buildings would look like once the money was freed and the legal case was over so the construction could start again. He spoke like he was talking to someone else, the way people do when they try to believe what they are saying. You will be okay. You have been working on this for 10 years. You know how this goes. You do the work. You keep yourself strong where you can, and you don't let the people who want to stop you succeed. In the end, you will still be standing, and they will not. At 1:43 in the morning, the drill finally passed through the inside of the foundation wall. He felt it before he heard it. The resistance suddenly dropping, the drill machine moving forward as the concrete gave way. He turned off the motor right away. He shone his flashlight into the hole and looked through it. It was dark. About 6 inches of darkness then. He moved the light. The wall inside. Concrete inside. Light was coming from below. The sub-basement was lit. That could be good or bad, depending on if the security guard below was in the room or somewhere else. He put the drill rig aside and began to remove the piece of concrete from the hole. The opening was 200 millimeters wide. He needed 400 millimeters to get through. That meant making 3 more holes close together, then using a tool to break the concrete between them. He took the tool out of his bag. He had bought it at the same hardware store on Burnside. He started breaking the concrete. This was quieter than the drilling, but slower and harder work. He hit the concrete with a hammer. Each hit moved the wall just a little bit. He worked quietly, except for the hammer hitting, the water flowing around his feet, and the soft sound of rain falling above. He thought about the security guard on the other side of the wall. One person, watching the server room. From his experience, guards working alone all night in basement rooms were not chosen for their sharp skills. They were hired because the company needed someone with permission to carry a gun, just to say the room was protected. The cheapest way was to find a person who did not mind sitting alone in a basement for 8 hours, watching nothing happen. That was almost certainly the case. He finally broke through the last part of the wall at 3:12 in the morning. He put his head in the hole and looked into the sub-basement. There was a hallway, about 12 feet wide, a low ceiling with covered lights that stayed on all night without anyone changing them. The hallway went left and right. To the left, there were machines, 2 big HVAC units, and metal air ducts on the ceiling. To the right, about 20 feet away, was a heavy door with a keypad lock. It was the kind of door found in server rooms, looking serious but easy to get through if you really tried from the outside. The hallway was empty. Jim listened carefully. He heard nothing except the soft hum of the HVAC and the low buzz of the servers working. If the security guard nearby was making any noise, it wasn't in this hallway. Jim pushed his equipment bag through a small hole first, then squeezed through himself. He barely fit, with only 6 inches to spare. He stood up in the basement hallway of the Willowbrook Institute at 3:14 a.m. From the waist down, his clothes were wet. He still had dried blood on his knuckle and a bruise on his cheek that had gotten worse over the last few hours. He paused for a moment. He took a deep breath and stared at the door with the keypad. He pulled his phone out of the waterproof bag where it had been safe. He opened a text message for Kevin, but didn't send it yet. Then he pulled out a pipe wrench from the bag. It was a solid tool, about 14 inches long, made of strong metal. He had used tools like this many times on night maintenance calls. He held it in his right hand and walked across the hall to the door. He looked closely at the keypad. It had 6 numbers and kept a record of every code used. He wasn't going to try guessing the code. Instead, he pressed his ear against the door and listened. Someone was breathing on the other side. The breaths were slow and steady, showing the person was awake and waiting, maybe sitting down near the door. Not asleep, just waiting, which was often how these jobs went. You waited and waited, with nothing happening. Jim stepped back a little. He looked again at the keypad and the door frame. The keypad was attached with 4 screws into the wall, which was drywall on top of concrete. The lock was magnetic, held closed by an electric magnet that turned off when the right code was entered, letting the door open. He pressed his hand on the door frame and pushed on the keypad with 2 fingers. The keypad moved just a little, maybe about a millimeter. The drywall was not fixed tightly to the concrete, but only stuck to the surface. This meant if he pushed hard in the right place, the wall would give way. Jim pulled the flat end of the wrench back and hit the wall next to the keypad with one strong strike. The drywall cracked. The keypad came off by about 2 inches, wires hanging loose. The magnetic lock turned off and the door swung open. He took out his phone, typed "now," and sent the message. Then he stepped into the server room. Inside, the security guard stood up quickly. He looked like someone who had been waiting for this moment and trying not to believe it would come. He was about in his mid-40s and strong. He had a holster under his jacket, with something on his right side, and his right hand was already reaching for it. Before the guard could do anything, Jim aimed the flashlight beam straight at his eyes from about 5 feet away. It wasn't a soft light, but bright and powerful. Jim held the headlamp like a weapon, shining as brightly as it could. The guard stopped moving. His arm froze in place. His whole body stopped moving, like when your brain gets too much information at once and needs a moment to catch up. Just half a second was enough. Jim took 2 quick steps and hit the worker's right forearm hard with the pipe wrench. Not the head, not the chest, the forearm. Because if that arm was hurt, the man couldn't use his weapon or chase Jim. Jim wasn't there to hurt anyone badly. He was there to get the truth. The worker fell to the side, the weapon still in its place. His right arm was bent across his chest. He hit the floor hard and tried to push up with his left hand. Jim put his boot on the man's shoulder to keep him down. He leaned close and said just one word. "Don't." The worker looked up, his eyes wet and surprised. He was still trying to understand how Jim had come through a hole in the wall and was now standing there, water dripping from him onto the floor. "You're not the one I want," Jim said. "The people who ordered you to guard this place, those are the ones I want. You're just an employee. You're the cheapest way for Novastride to say they had security here. In about 4 minutes, every fire truck and policeman in the West Hills will be at this building. They will want to know why there's a hole in the wall. And what you say about it is up to you." Jim looked him in the eye. "You can say you caught someone trying to get in. That puts this on the record and puts you right in the middle of what's going to happen to this company. Or you can say you don't know how the hole got there, you were on a break and didn't see anything. Then someone else will deal with it. It's your choice, but you have about 30 seconds. The worker stared at him for a while. Then, slowly, he moved his left hand away from his body, palm flat on the floor. Jim stood up straight and turned to the server rack. Pete Calhoun had told him what to look for. The main storage system was air-gapped, meaning it was not connected to the internet and was kept separate from the main company network, except for a private VPN that sent data to the Nova Stride servers. That meant the real recordings were kept only on physical drives in this room. No cloud backups, no copies kept somewhere else. A company hiding secrets this serious would never keep backup files off-site, because that could risk exposure. The rack was a common commercial style, 6 units tall and 3 wide. The archive drives were in the middle row of the second column. Jim knew this because Pete had identified the power pattern as coming from a high-density RAID setup. RAID arrays have a certain look once you know what to spot. Jim opened the rack panel. 4 drive trays were there. He grabbed all 4 quickly, without pause, and put them into the contractor's bag he had in his pack. It all took less than a minute and a half. Just as he was about to close the bag, the fire alarm started. It didn't begin softly. Fire alarms never do. The loud 2-tone sound was designed to make sure nobody could think about anything other than leaving the building right away. The alarm light on the panel above the server room switched to red. Jim looked up at the ceiling. The system there used CO2 to stop fires, not water. That was usual for places with a lot of electrical equipment. It wouldn't turn on where he was. The alarm was from upstairs, 3 floors above, if he counted right. 3 floors up, in the high security area. The oxygen pipes every 12 feet along the hallway. She had done it. She really had. He closed the contractor bag and picked up his gear. He glanced at the contractor sitting on the floor. The man looked at him like he had made a quick decision and was okay with it. "There's a hole in your east foundation wall," Jim said. "You'll want to patch it before someone else finds it." Jim walked back through the server room door, across the hall, and through the break in the wall into the drain tunnel. The fire alarm was faint, but still there, more like a vibration in the concrete than a loud sound in the air. He moved quickly, bent over, carrying the contractor bag on one shoulder and the gear pack on his back, moving through the tunnel toward the exit. The water was higher now than when he'd first come in. It had been raining for 4 hours, flooding the drain. The water reached up to his thighs at the curve, pushing against him from the side. He kept his balance and didn't slip. He made the run in about 20 minutes. He found the ladder inside the shaft and climbed up. The lid came off with one push. Cold rain hit his face. He had never been so glad to smell the damp air of a November morning in Portland. The smell of wet concrete and pine trees told him he was outside, safe, and that what he had come to do was done. He put the lid back in place and walked to his truck. He didn't rush. Walking quietly stopped people from noticing him. Even soaked in rain at 4:15 a.m., he looked like a regular night worker finishing up. He got in the truck and put the contractor bag on the passenger seat. He sat for a moment. 3 blocks north, he could see the first emergency lights turning on to Ridgecrest through the rain, red and white flashes. From where he was, Willowbrook wasn't visible, so Willowbrook couldn't see him. He watched the flashing lights bounce off the wet road, trees, and clouds. Up there, 3 floors up, Allie was inside. The building was being emptied. She would come out with the fire department, security, and others. Since she stopped taking their medication, she had been careful and sharp. She wasn't giving anyone a chance to use her against her. She would be okay. He believed that. He had to believe it. The other choice was driving 3 blocks north and walking into a place full of emergency workers and security, carrying a bag of stolen hard drives. That wouldn't end well for him or those drives. He started the truck, took his burner phone from the bag with one hand, and called Carol Vittner while driving. She answered on the second ring. He didn't know if she had been asleep. It didn't matter. "The filing," Jim said. 7 a.m. Don't change a thing." There was a long pause. "Jim, are you—" "I'm fine." 7 a.m., Carol. Not a minute later. He ended the call and started driving again. He went through West Hills, down Northwest Portland, and crossed the Burnside Bridge. The city was mostly empty at that hour. He saw only a few trucks, rain on the windshield, and his own tired face in the glass whenever he stopped at a light. His cheek showed a dark bruise, much worse than he thought it would be. His hair was wet and stuck to his head. He looked like someone who had been through a lot but wasn't sure what it all meant yet. He went to a motel in Southeast Portland. It was a place he had never stayed at before and didn't plan to stay at again. He paid cash for 2 nights and got a room on the ground floor at the back. He put down the bag on the bed carefully. Inside were 4 hard drives. He took them out and placed them in a row on the blanket. They were regular-sized computer drives, the kind used to store large amounts of data. Each one had a small label showing a time period. The labels covered 8 years, and the most recent files stopped 2 weeks earlier. 8 years. Pete had said the data was huge, more than 1 petabyte. The drives held secret information that no one was supposed to know about, stored in a server room anyone was not meant to reach. Jim sat on the bed, staring at the drives for a long time. He thought about the information stored there. He thought about the files he needed and many more that had nothing to do with him. They were about other people. Women like Allie. Women whose lives and careers had been damaged. He knew the company had been doing this for a long time, and it was not a single case. There were many victims. The data would show exactly how many, and the number was going to be very large. "Okay," he said quietly. The The kind of words you say when you're sure of what you decided. He would not wait. He wouldn't hold on to the information or share it bit by bit. He planned to give it all away at once to the right people who could act quickly. He needed to do this before Carol's report came in at 7 a.m., before Novastride's lawyers could try to stop or slow things down. He wanted the evidence to be in the hands of federal agents before the company could claim it was unusable. He opened his laptop and went online. He found the FBI's Portland office contact page. He opened the SEC whistleblower submission site. He also found contact details for 4 reporters he had chosen, 2 at the Oregonian, 1 in Seattle, and 1 in Washington. They were all known for reporting on problems in healthcare, and he had read their work in preparation. He checked the time, 4:47 a.m. That gave him 2 hours and 13 minutes before Carol's report was officially filed and the process would start. He began to type, not a long, emotional story or a complaint. He wrote a clear, simple summary explaining the financial setup he had studied, the control system Carol had mentioned without naming it, the strange orders Terry Walsh had recorded, Pete Calhoun's mapping of connections, and where the drives were now stored. He attached the drives as evidence. 10 years of business experience helped him put all the facts together in a way others could understand. He wrote it like a simple report. Who did what, when it happened, how the money moved, and where the proof was. He sent it to the FBI field office with the serial numbers of the drives in the subject line at 5:12 a.m. A little later, at 5:29 a.m., he sent a changed version that explained the story side to 4 reporters. Then, at 5:37 a.m., he sent the report to the SEC. After that, he put the drives back in the bag, hid it under the bed, lay down on top of the covers with his boots still on, and closed his eyes. He knew he wouldn't sleep, but he relaxed and let his body rest from the last 18 hours. At 6:52 a.m., the phone rang. It was Carol Vittner, already at her desk even earlier than usual. He answered right away. "Jim," she said, her voice different. "There are 2 FBI agents waiting in my lobby. They got here before I did. They have a case number and a supervisor. They want to talk to you. Where are you?" "Southeast Portland. Motel. I can be at your office in 20 minutes. "Jim," she paused. "Did you—" "There are 4 hard drives under the bed I'm lying on. They hold 8 years of proof of wrongdoings by Novastride managers. I'm the one who took them, and soon they'll be with you. 20 minutes. The line went quiet for a long time. "I'll have coffee ready," Carol said. He stood up, grabbed the bag, and looked around the room. 8 years ago, Bob Gordon had started setting all this up carefully. He had been patient, waiting for just the right time to use it on the one person he wanted to stop. But now, the whole plan was broken. The money control, the legal protections, the hidden proof, the silence, all gone. Now, it was only a question of how fast everything would fall apart and who would be affected. Jim left the room. He got into his truck and drove north through the rain toward Carol Vittner's office, toward the FBI agents, and toward what would happen next. He did not look back. He never looked back. Carol's conference room smelled like fresh coffee and a quiet tension in the air. She had placed 2 cups on the table before Jim sat down. She said nothing about how he looked or the bag he carried beside his chair. That said a lot about Carol. She was a woman who cared about order and timing. The 2 agents were Special Agent Dana Reyes, a precise woman in her late 30s who spoke clearly and directly, and Special Agent Thomas Calloway, quieter but focused, taking notes and asking careful questions that filled in the gaps. They arrived at Carol's office at 6:41 a.m., nearly 20 minutes before the court received the federal motion to preserve evidence. That meant someone at the FBI had read Jim's email at 5:12 a.m. and acted within the hour. That showed Jim they were taking the information on the drives very seriously. "Mr. House," Reyes said, placing a case number sheet on the table. "We have read your report. We have talked to the tech team about the drives. Before we go further, we need to know exactly who has had the drives since you took them." The drives were in a server room in the sub-basement of the Willowbrook Institute at 417 Ridgecrest Drive in the West Hills, Jim said. "I took them out at about 3:15 this morning. I had the drives with me from the moment I took them off the rack until I placed them on the bed in the motel room where I put together the submission. They have stayed with me the whole time. They are in that bag." He pointed to the contractor bag on the floor. "I can explain how I got them. Some of that information might cause problems for me, and I will talk about those problems with my lawyer separately. What matters is that the drives are safe, the data is not damaged, and the chain of custody from the source to the federal office is clear enough to hold up in court." Reyes looked at Carol. Carol gave a small nod. This was a sign from the lawyer that her client was ready to be open. "Tell us about the source," Reyes said. Jim explained everything. Not the plumbing system, not the core drill, not the pipe wrench. He explained Pete Calhoun's routing records, the internet connection leading to the Willowbrook sub-basement, the power use patterns, the building permits, and the shell companies that linked Willowbrook to Nova Stride. He explained the court order signed by Judge Hollis and how she had worked for Nova Stride for 12 years before being appointed as a judge. He explained the lawsuit, the freezing of assets, the lien claims, and the fake eviction notice. He told them about the event when the original video was deleted within 18 hours after being sent to his email. He gave all the facts clearly, like a man stating simple truths. He didn't ask for pity or try to convince anyone. The facts spoke loud enough. Calloway wrote down 4 pages of notes. When Jim finished, Reyes was quiet for a moment. Then she asked, "You said the archive contains 8 years of material. How do you know that?" "The labels on the drive trays," Jim answered. "Each one has a date range. The oldest is from 8 years ago. I can show you." He reached into the bag and took out one of the 4 drives. He held it up for them to see the label without touching it. It read from 8 years ago to about 2 years ago. He put it down and took out the next, then the next, then the newest one. "The archive on these drives isn't just about what happened to Allie Grayson," Jim said. "A storage system this big, kept carefully like this over so many years, isn't just 2 men hiding one event. This is a pattern. Whatever is on those drives covers more than her case. I don't know how much. That's your job now." Reyes looked at Calloway, and Calloway looked back at her. Something passed between them quickly and professionally. Something Jim couldn't understand, but he didn't have to. He waited to see what they would do next. "We need to take the drives right away," Reyes said. "I know," Jim said. "That's why I brought them here instead of hiding them somewhere else." He pushed the bag toward her. "There are 4 trays, sign for each one. I want the receipt to go to Carol." Reyes unzipped the bag, checked the drives by their date labels, and took out a chain of custody form that she had ready, thinking this conversation would go this way. Jim signed where she told him, and Carol signed as a witness. It was 8:22 a.m. "One more thing," Jim said. "Allie Grayson is now kept at the Willowbrook Institute under the court order signed by Judge Hollis. She was the one who created the distraction that let me get into the server room. She is not likely to try to leave and is not a danger. She is a woman who was drugged and forced, then locked in a building owned by the people who did this to her. A judge they paid signed papers to keep her there. When you raid Willowbrook, and since you 2 came here so fast this morning, I guess that will happen today. I want you to make sure she gets checked by doctors who do not work for Nova Stride or any of its branches. The order to keep her there must be challenged in federal court, not the local county court, because Judge Hollis is involved and any state court can be influenced. Do you understand what I'm asking?" "We do," Reyes said. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were not. Her eyes showed she knew this was important. "Good." Jim stood up. "Then we're done for today. I think you'll want to talk to me again after your tech team looks over the drives." "We will," Reyes said. "Mr. House, don't leave the city." He almost smiled. He had heard those exact words before, from Detective Marsh, in a rental apartment with a wrench in his hands. That seemed like a long time ago now. "I have 11 properties to take care of," he said. "I'm not going anywhere." He drove back to his motel. He slept 6 hours, the longest he had slept in weeks. He woke to 23 missed calls and a full voicemail box. Carol called 4 times. Doug Farrell called twice. A reporter from the Oregonian called 3 times and sent 7 texts. A Washington Post journalist called once and sent 2 urgent emails. 2 unknown numbers called many times, but he didn't return those calls. He sat on the bed and listened to Carol's first voicemail. "Jim, it's 10:45 a.m. The FBI carried out search warrants on Willowbrook Institute and Nova Stride's headquarters at 9 a.m. I got this from court records. The warrant for Willowbrook is based on your drive and is federal, so it overrides Judge Hollis's order. Allie Grayson has been moved to OHSU for an independent mental health check. I don't know her exact status, but she's no longer at Willowbrook. Also, Nova Stride's stock dropped 31% this morning when the financial news linked the preservation order to problems found in building inspections. The lenders in the Cayman Islands have reached out to Nova Stride's finance team. I think they are starting to discuss contracts. Call me. He called her back. Jim, she said right away. The contract was activated at 2 p.m. All 7 building projects missed their inspection deadlines. The lenders asked for payment at 11:47 a.m., $430 million due immediately. Nova Stride doesn't have it. They announced the board is stepping down and the company is under new control at 1:15 p.m. The stock dropped 78% from the opening price. The lawsuit against you has been put on hold because of this change. It's basically over. There's no company left to take the case. Jim stared at the wall. Carol went on. The freeze on your bank accounts was linked to the lawsuit. Since the case is on hold and the company is gone, the freeze isn't valid anymore. I asked the court to remove the freeze at 12:30 p.m. Doug is working on the paperwork to clear the liens at the same time. You should have access to your main business account by the end of the day tomorrow at the latest. And Hollis? The federal warrant clearly says the Willowbrook commitment order was gotten through bad behavior by the judge. The DOJ started a separate investigation into Judge Patricia Hollis around 10 a.m. today. She has stepped away from all active cases while they review everything. The commitment order is legally canceled as of this afternoon. He thought about that. And Bob Gordon? He's still at OHSU. A pause. He is said to be getting better after his surgeries. The charges were given to him at his hospital room around 1 p.m. today. Federal charges, extortion, conspiracy, sexual assault, coercion, messing with evidence. The charges list him, Nelson, and 3 other board members whose actions show up on the archive drives. Another pause. Jim, about those drives, the Bureau told me quietly that there are more victims besides Allie. Many victims over several years. The number they are working with is quite large. I know, Jim said. I told them it would be. The press will want to speak with you. I know that too. What do you want to say? He paused for a moment. Nothing, he answered. I have nothing to say to the press. I'm a real estate developer. A civil suit was filed against me, but it was dropped. My accounts are unfrozen. I'm going back to work. Carol was quiet for a moment. Jim, what you did... We're going to be very careful not to talk about what happened in detail. Not to anyone. Not even to each other. Especially not to each other. He said this calmly. Whatever happened last night happened to a man named Daniel Marsh, and Daniel Marsh doesn't exist. What's real is a real estate developer in Portland whose accounts are being unfrozen and whose construction project can start again. That's the story. Understood, Carol said. Her voice sounded like someone who had expected this and had already prepared what needed to be done. There is one more thing. Allie Grayson. What about her? She's at OHSU. The mental health check is happening now. From what the Bureau has quietly shared with me, the evidence that she was forced to take chemicals without her permission and kept longer than she should has been seen as very important. Because of this, the state says they do not plan to charge her for the earlier shooting case. The evidence of her being controlled by drugs makes it clear she did not act on her own will in any crime. She is going to be released. Good, Jim said. A pause. She asked about you. He looked at the wall again. What did she say? She asked if you were okay. I told her yes. You gave her the right answer. He stood up. Thank you, Carol, for everything. Jim, do you need anything else right now? One thing. Connect me with a trust lawyer. Not Doug. Someone outside the group who deals with secret charitable accounts. A short pause. I can do that. What kind of account? A restricted account. Bearer authorization. No name linked to the person until the money moves. $500,000. The receiver is Allie Grayson. I want it set so she can use it within 30 days. No strings, no questions, no contact info about who gave it. She gets the money and can disappear if she wants. That's all. The silence on Carol's side was long enough that Jim thought the call might be over. $500,000, Carol said finally. I'll tell you where the money will come from once the accounts are unfrozen. Jim. Her voice changed in a way he hadn't heard before. You know she'll never find out it was you? Yes, he said. I know that. He ended the call. 6 months later, he finished the storage building, 200 units. Everyone rented before the doors even opened. On the morning of the opening, he stood in the hallway with a cup of coffee. He looked at the clean walls, the concrete floor, the numbered doors, and the long row of lights above. He thought about the plans he had drawn on a folding table, the pencil lines tracing a path through the West Hills. He thought about the floor safe, now empty, money spent on what needed paying for. He thought about Marcus and Diane and the 6 others who stayed when they could have left. He thought about all that just long enough to finish his coffee. Then he went back to work. Next came the commercial buildings. He had planned them for 2 years, a 6-story building in the Pearl District with stores and offices combined. He started building in spring. By the next summer, he was making over $1 million a year. The debt on the storage building was paid off ahead of schedule. He hired 3 more people. He moved out of the motel and bought a house in the West Hills. Not near Willowbrook, but high up with a view of the city he hadn't exactly earned, but had paid for. Then came the high-rise. It took 3 years from the first permit to the day it opened. Jim closed on the commercial building when he was 31. He moved his office to the top floor because the view was the best and because it was his building. He had earned that special spot in ways no one would ever write down. He watched the news only when he wanted to, not when he didn't. Bob Gordon had admitted in court to serious charges about 18 months after his case began. His deal kept him out of a big trial where many secrets would have been made public, which was exactly what Gordon had wanted. It didn't stop him from going to federal prison, where he would serve 12 years with no chance of leaving early for the first 8. Nelson had gone to trial, lost badly, and was set to spend 15 years in prison. Judge Hollis had been taken off the bench and was waiting for her own legal case. Nova Stride had fallen apart, and its parts were taken over by other companies. The big contract, built on unfair pressure and used to get a loan that was then used against others, had been canceled by the courts. $430 million held overseas was sent back to the lenders, minus the fees taken by the court-appointed managers. None of that concerned Jim anymore. It stopped being his problem the morning he handed over 4 drives to 2 FBI agents in Carol Vittner's conference room. He was in his penthouse on a Tuesday night when he turned on the news, not caring much about what would be on, just wanting the background noise of the world. The main story surprised him. Outside a federal courthouse in Portland, a reporter talked about final legal steps and the last person left in the Nova Stride case. Then the courthouse doors opened. She came out alone. No lawyer by her side. The lawyers had probably gone ahead or stayed behind. She was the one the cameras wanted, and she knew it. The way she moved through the crowd and answered, shouted questions showed she had decided exactly what she was willing to show the world and what she would keep to herself. She was tougher than he remembered. That was the best way to say it. Not hurt. The word he had thought that night in the parking lot when she said goodbye over Kevin's lost phone. Not broken, just tougher. Like how some things get stronger under pressure, like how concrete hardens as it dries. She wore a dark coat, her hair looked different, and the face on the screen was thinner than the one he last saw looking up at him from the floor of their old apartment. She didn't stop for the reporters. She didn't answer their questions. She walked straight to the street, got into a taxi, and it slowly drove away. Jim watched the taxi until the camera switched back to the reporter giving a summary. Then he turned off the TV. He sat in the dark penthouse of his building for a while. The city spread out below, and the hills were visible through the big west-facing windows. He thought about a girl in a high school gym telling a 17-year-old boy a hard truth in a simple and honest way. Something that cost her a lot. He thought about a bar after a graduation party and 2 hours of dancing, and a woman who laughed at something he said, looking completely herself. He thought about the ring, the apartment, the building plans on the folding table, all the things that had been made. and all the things that had been lost. He sat with those thoughts, not replaying them, not living in them, just holding them quietly for a moment, like holding a tool before putting it down for the last time. Then he stood up, walked to his desk, and opened his laptop. He had 3 business offers to look at before morning, 2 construction bids to compare, and a property on the east side that Marcus said was undervalued by 40% if you knew where to look. Jim knew where to look. He always had. He got to work. Thank you so much to all our viewers for joining us on this journey until the very end. If there is one big lesson from Jim's story, it is that real strength isn't about holding on to the pain of betrayal. It is about having the courage to rebuild your life when everything falls apart. Dishonesty may slow us down, but it does not decide who we will become or where we will end up. We always have the power to leave behind harmful cycles, focus on growing ourselves, and build a future on a strong and honest base. In the end, the greatest win over those who hurt you is to keep moving forward and find peace inside yourself. There has been so much heartbreak and growth in these stories. We'd love to hear what you think. Which character's journey touched you the most? Do you believe Jim made the right choice in the end? If you like this video and want to see more stories about drama, strength, and complicated relationships, please subscribe to the Infidelity Director channel. Your support means a lot to us. Click subscribe and get ready for the next story.